can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Chase Harmer of Wishes.Inc. Chase, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. We were just chatting about the mission and amazing thing Wishes.Inc. is doing, which reminds me of an interview I did with Ethan Austin of Give Forward. Give Forward helps people fundraise to support a loved one. And I did the interview 8 years ago, I think. And so it was just interesting for his journey. Also, because this is kind of in the fintech space, Steve Sarowitz, founder of Paylocity I had on, and Blue Marble Payroll, started in a 600 square foot office and went public, I believe. And it's $1 billion company. So it was pretty amazing, the humble beginnings to what he created. And just some other SaaS ones, because I had the co-founder of Zapier on, so that was an interesting one, and the co-founder of Pipedrive on. And when I interviewed them, I think they had 10,000 customers. Now they have, I think, over 100,000 customers. So they've grown pretty tremendously, and just amazing journey, ups and downs. So check those out. More on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise25. Rise25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. And we're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. And we do the strategy, the accountability, and the full execution. Chase, we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background to make it look easy for the host and the company so they can create amazing content, create amazing relationships, most importantly, run their business. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I've found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you thought about podcasting, you definitely should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com to learn more, or email us at support@rise25.com. I'm excited to introduce Chase Harmer. He built a $40 million per year business by the time he was 32. And his last fintech was acquired for over $100 million. And now he decided to disrupt the charitable space. Basically, you can make impact. Your dollars can make impact for every contribution that you make. And that's what he has set out to actually disrupt. They turn donations into credit cards, retail credit cards for you, and really create a transparency among what you're donating. So I'm excited to talk today. Chase, thanks for joining me.
Hey, man, thanks for having me, Jeremy. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Let's just start off. We'll talk about profit pay, building a team. We'll talk about acquisition, but let's just tell people a little bit about Wishes.Inc. and what you do.
Yeah. So, after I exited my last fintech, I started giving back to charities more often. And what I realized was that I was never able to understand the impact that my dollars were making. And that's because most charities, they never are able to show you your dollars, return on impact dollars to dollar. And most stories, if you look at like a GoFundMe, once dollars go into the bank account, that black box is never to be heard or seen from again. So, what we wanted to do is create accountability and then also not change user behavior. I think there's been platforms in the past that have tried to create transparency, but it was around the blockchain, and blockchain, unfortunately, is not really used in the mainstream. And you can't go to Safeway and try to make a purchase at the grocery store. So we've actually created ledgers on both sides of the transaction by becoming a card issuer. So we have a relationship with MasterCard, and we can issue cards directly to the Google and Apple wallet. So anybody that has a phone that is creating a story on Wishes can essentially receive these virtual MasterCards and make purchases inside of our store. And the store is connected to thousands of the big box retailers that you see out in the world today. So anywhere that you can possibly buy anything, groceries, rideshare, hotels, airfare, anything that you need and you're asking for money for, health-related things, hospital bills, things like this, you can actually receive those funds and start instantly purchase what you need, and is fully transparent to the donors. And donors can earn rewards, tax deductibility, and transparency on all the purchases that are made in real time. And so you kind of solved a lot of the problems that exist in charitable giving, and we're stoked to be able to launch it this March.
So we'll walk through a scenario, Chase,
Mhm.
but I want to know why create this, because I could see you go, great, there's not transparency. I'm just going to pick the charities that are transparent, and you decide to build a whole company around it, right? So like, I'm just going to go with Charity Water. I can see where things are going, but you decide to
Sure.
build this thing. So why? Why?
Well, I think that's a one-off and random example because the like 99.9% of charities can't actually do that. So if you think about, well, there was a survey done by Candid this last year in 2023, and 81% of donors surveyed said that they'd give more if they understood what happened to the money. And unfortunately, every single charity out there, 76% of the charities that were interviewed realized that showing impact was the most important thing that they had to do as a charity. However, less than 26% of those 76 that were surveyed had a way to do that. It's almost impossible to show dollar for dollar impact when everything goes into a big bucket. And in that bucket is making decisions on where that money is being spent. So when Jeremy puts in $20, they can't show you where that $20 went. It's impossible. It goes into a big pot that they're stewing, and then they're allocating dollars as they see fit. So they can't actually show you what happened to their money. And if they have any way to do that, it's happening. They're sending some sort of report 12 to 18 months later. So, but in the meantime, they're calling Jeremy back and they're saying, "Hey, Jeremy, thanks for your contribution. We really need help on this other thing," right? But they can't actually show you what happened to the money in the meantime. So it's a much different conversation when the charity can go back and say, "Hey, Jeremy, we appreciate your contribution. Look at the impact that you made. By the way, we have this other thing that's happening. We'd love you to be participating in this as well." So I think it helps charities raise money, but it helps donors to fully understand where their dollars are going. And every donor wants to understand what goes to admin, what goes to impact. And when they don't understand, donors just don't want to contribute. Well, every grocery store is asking you for $1 to help the kids, but what kids are actually being helped, nobody actually knows.
What stems you to create this? Because you could have done anything. You sold the company, right? Was there a moment in time they're like, I need to? Because again, we'll talk about what you had to do to get to this point, which is
Yeah.
sounds super stressful just from a compliance perspective. Like I
Yeah.
would have been like, I give up. Like I would have learned about the compliance, like forget
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
why did you tackle this in the first
Yeah.
place?
Because,
I'm
unfixable
trying to
problems.
get in the crazy mind of an entrepreneur here. So
Yeah.
that's
Well, first of all, to be a founder, you have to be there's got to be some screws loose. And I think, we endure the pain that naturally comes when trying to tackle a problem that nobody's been able to solve for 100 years. There's dinosaurs that exist inside of the charitable giving space, dinosaurs companies that buy up other companies that are trying to innovate, but they're so old that innovative infrastructure doesn't actually get adapted the same way to the market. So I feel like the only space that really hasn't seen any innovation since 2010 is the charitable giving space. It's been a black box forever, and nobody's really been able to crack the code. The 2000 and when I say it's since 2010, the only innovation that happened was really when GoFundMe came to market. However, GoFundMe had problems then that still exist today. They're the same problems that exist today. So they haven't really solved the main problems that they had in the market at that point, which is really you know, the story's fraud, because once it goes into the black box of the bank account, you lose all sight of what happens to the money. And unfortunately, people are good manipulators. There are legit stories on there that really need the help. Like, hey, Tommy broke his arm, but, maybe Nancy didn't really have cancer. And, it's difficult to prove that sometimes. And so when the money comes in and they raise $600,000 for this cancer, that really never was cancer. They find out, a year later that Nancy just went to the Bahamas, and took everyone for a ride. That's the problem that I was trying to fix. I mean, I had been spending the last 11 years before this pay, being the whole economy of a business supply chain, when a consumer purchases, then actually utilizing that purchase to create a card to pay the supplier. And I was like, well, I've been doing this for 11 years. I was innovating this technology since 2013. I'm like, what's the difference between what we were doing in the business supply chain, um, than the donation chain? Nothing. It's the same thing. So we actually just created the whole economy of a donation cycle. Hey, donations in, create a card, push it to what's the supplier? The supplier is the person telling the story. And once that wisher gets that card, they have to spend money, and everybody wants to understand what that is. And I thought it was pretty simple for me to fix. Obviously not super simple and
Famous
very
last words.
complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, well, this will be easy. Part of the issue was, there was obviously if you watch the news, the Sam Bankman thing, all these banks were involved in a lot of this crypto and blockchain technology. So the compliance back when I did this initially back in 2013, 14, the compliance was a lot easier because there hadn't been these huge problems that the Sam Bankmans of the world created, right? But because there was no compliance that was done in big companies like that, and there was a huge downfall of all these money, these investors, that came down on the compliance for new people that tried to set up a platform. It's like you set up a platform now and you have a new innovative model. Um, it's a rigorous amount of work and compliance effort that you have to go to get it done. And that was pretty much pulling my hair out. And I think this is why my receding hairline now. It's like it's gone back.
I could see Chase now with, you started Profit Pay. And so you saw that you could apply this model in a different industry that had a real need to it that maybe
Yeah.
was antiquated. And so kind of the roots, and we'll talk about Profit Pay, but now I can see like, innovation often comes from outside industry. So you were
Mhm.
taking something and just applying it to
Right.
the charitable space.
Mhm.
Um, Talk a little bit about what it's taken to get to this point. I know, from a compliance standpoint, from a sponsor, from a conversation standpoint,
Mhm.
leading, I think this is instructive for any business, really leading
Yeah.
up to it. What were some of the things you had to go through and put in place?
Well, so from my last experience of building a fintech, what I realized was, hey, listen, I didn't want to spend a bazillion dollars trying to build this. What I wanted to do, and I had contractors and contractor engineers at my last company. I had a lot of them. We had like 100 at some point. But the problem with contractors is the job's never done, because when the job's done, the payments stop, right? So, there's always something that needs to happen or it needs to continue. So they don't have a vested interest in you actually getting done with any project. And so I really learned that hard lesson the last time. And so when I started this company, I didn't have an engineering team to start with, right? Because, we were starting from scratch. So what I did was I created a partnership with an engineering team, and we essentially had a vested outcome in we both had a vested interest in the outcome. So they have 20% ownership in the company. We still pay them a stipend on a monthly basis for the team, but we got very, very elite engineers, senior engineers, that had already the whole infrastructure. Because when you're building a product, there's a lot of things that you need. You need front end engineers, you need back end engineers, you need DevOps engineers, you need UI guys, you need designers. But finding each one of those guys and then having them work together and then having it all understandable code, and that actually is a difficult process, and it's really hard to hire all these people individually. So I got an ingrained team. We made an agreement, and we started a partnership, and that partnership allowed me to build the product much faster, and they have a vested interest in the outcome just like I do. So, the vested outcome is that one day we'll be acquired, or, we'll sell or go IPO, something like this. And we can't do that unless the job's done and the product's in market and people are actively using it, doing transactions. And so that was number one. Then number two, I had already gone through compliance before. So, I had a head start. I knew exactly what they wanted to see. I knew exactly how to go through the system, which people to get on my side and start rooting for me so that you can get those guys internally. Because when you're dealing with a bank, what happens typically is, you always have a new person or somebody new looking at the deal, right? That's the issue. So you need somebody in there advocating for you at all times because typically the compliance guy comes in and this random auditor comes in and they're like, hey, what about this? It's like, and they screw up the whole deal. It's like, dude, like, so you need to be prepared for all those things and
And
have somebody
sometimes you're
advocating
not even
for you.
communicating with them, and maybe only
Well, you never
internal
talk to that
teams.
guy.
Yeah.
He just shows up out of nowhere. He's like, "Hey guys, blah. Let me make my job important now." So this is why I get paid, the big buck. And so like, there's a lot of that going on, especially in banks, and there's a lot of bureaucracy in a banking business. And so, people want to like show their worth, and how they show their worth is by, like a lawyer, like they put the red line in the contract. It's like you didn't even have to do that, but you want to feel like this is why I'm getting paid. So there's a lot of that, and you just have to know how to work the system, just like any other system. Is like you really just need to know how to weave and bob and get through it. And I think that was a big part of the process is that I've done that before. And going through the gauntlet one time allows you to go through the gauntlet much easier the second time.
How do you create internal champions? Because I think that's a really interesting thing
Yeah.
for any company. I mean, there's a lot of when people are dealing with enterprise companies or even smaller companies, you're
Yeah.
usually not talking to all the decision makers.
No, that's true. So I built a relationship with one of the guys on the banking team, and we basically had start separate conversations, and we built this relationship, and he was basically became my advocate because, you know, and he started saying to me, he's like, listen, these guys are going to come into this meeting. They don't know who you are. He's like, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is what you need to do. So he was actually kind of prepping them and selling them for me. So when you have someone else working in there, and it's really just about building relationships, because when you come into these relationships for the first time, you got to kind of like almost like play the few guys like, okay, who is it gonna be? Like, who's it gonna be? Like, like, but you, you really gotta like really focus on building the relationship with one of these people. Like, who is it gonna be? Like, who's gonna be my champion? And start building the inroads to having a personal relationship with this person. And when I say personal relationship, I don't mean personal in the the way like holding hands, but like
Yeah.
more like, building that personal relationship, having some common interests and actually like being a little vulnerable to that person so that, you actually can establish this bond that he becomes this champion for you inside the company or he or she. And that's what it requires to really get through the gauntlet is to build that relationship. So you got to figure out who that's going to be in the beginning and start working those inroads so that way you can get to where you need to go.
So I love that question, Chase, which is who's going to be my champion and
Yeah.
just figuring that out. So you're the team, then compliance,
Yeah.
and then I think there's sponsorships.
Yeah. So we have card brand sponsorships. So again, like I had gone through this process before. So MasterCard and Visa, both of those organizations are massive. So you're like a little flea. And as a startup, they don't care about fleas. They're like, listen, flea, like we got lots of fleas. we don't we don't know which flea is gonna be good and like whatever, right? So um I had some clout built up from my last company. And so they knew who I was. And the guy that was leading the fintech division, I had a personal relationship with already. So I was able to get in there and get a contract built that gave us exclusivity instead of a MasterCard VIN. There's advantages and disadvantages to getting exclusive VINs, and the advantages are you get to show their brand everywhere. And being a partner with MasterCard, there's obviously advantages because we're issuing a MasterCard that can be used virtually anywhere on the planet. MasterCard has a bigger international presence than Visa does. Visa is bigger in the US, but internationally, which obviously we have a goal to expand internationally, they have better international rails and you can be easier, flexible like over time. So that was part of the strategy was, long term, we want to be able to issue cards in all the countries, and who has better international rails and more flexible for us to do that. And that was MasterCard. And I just had some inroads, and I had done some big deals with MasterCard before, so I had some clout built up. So that's, you know, so even though my first fintech was a nightmare for me, I did escape out of there with a lot of solid relationships that still knew who I was, and were willing to make some exceptions and get us in the back door. And we did that for less than $2 million. When I say get us in the back door, like nobody could have built this company for less than $2 million. Had I not had these pre-existing relationships and these inroads. Typically, to build a fintech of what we've accomplished, it takes millions of dollars more than what we were able to do it for,
and probably much longer timeline too.
100, well, yeah, like because I knew exactly how to do it, and I knew all the loopholes we all knew how to take all these necessary steps to get it to where it was. It's kind of ingrained niche knowledge that allowed me to do this as quickly as we did, and for the amount of money that we did. A company like PayPal could put 1 million people in a room and say, "Hey, here's $100 million, and go fix this problem or go solve this problem." Like, as a startup, you don't have that kind of capital and you don't have that kind of time. So,
You mentioned, Chase, previously a nightmare situation. What were you referring to?
Yeah. I mean, I was a non-tech founder, it's like, hey, listen, I've never doubted myself for 1 minute in any circumstance. I've always been like, yeah, dude, I could solve that. Get the deal and then figure it out later, And then all of a sudden I raised $30 million. I was like, crap, like we got to fix this. We got to figure out this deal. Like, I built a prototype. It was super wobbly. And then all of a sudden.
This was with Profit Pay?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then we had $30 million to figure that out. But essentially, when you build a house on sticks, and then you keep building the tower, right? Eventually, the tower gets super tall and heavy, and you're like, dude, like this is crazy, right? So, but that's because I didn't know what engineers to get. I didn't know. I started with an engineer. I thought, oh, engineers are engineers, right? They're all the same. I had no idea that you need to build the foundation. Just like when you build a house, you got to build the foundation solid. That requires a DevOps engineer that can actually build that foundation. I didn't know that, so I just got an engineer, that ended up biting me in the ass later, and then we had to tear down the Tower of Pisa and rebuild it. And, when, part of that problem was also that we didn't document code. So, when you don't document code, because I didn't know, document code, I just assumed like it was all there. But when you have 120 engineers or 150, we had 150 at one point. I mean, just insane, right? This is spider web of stuff going on in there. And then you fire 10 of these guys, or you get rid of 10 of these guys because of whatever. Hey, go finish Jack's work. Like, what the hell is Jack doing? I don't know. Like, it's just like a spider web over there. And then, something breaks, for example. Something breaks. Like, dude, go find that break. Like, oh, it takes days to weeks to figure out where that break happened. And if you're scaled and you have massive transactions going through, being incapable of fixing problems within days or weeks is detrimental to the business. So, these are all things that you learn that you don't necessarily, as a non-tech founder, fortunately, there's no book on how to build a tech company as a non-tech founder. Like, and because you're going 100 miles an hour and putting the wheels on the bus, and the wheels on the bus, if they're not the right size, you got like the wrong size tire on the right back wheel, and everything else is going like full speed ahead at 100 miles an hour. It's not going to be a smooth ride. And those are the things that you figure out, and you're just like, man, but again, those are the things you don't repeat, right? Because like those mistakes kill you, and they kill time, they kill capital, and you learn to not repeat those types of mistakes. And so I'm grateful for those mistakes because I never made them again, right? And I did this all with my own capital and made that all happen. So
let's walk through, Chase, some of obviously ProfitPay was very successful and grew to an amazing amount in business. But let's walk through some of the mistakes in that you aren't repeating in Wishes.
Yeah.
One of them we were talking before we hit record is you built a team over 200 people.
Yeah.
So what were some of and that's not easy to do. Even
No.
so, what were some of the hiring or building a team mistakes that now you learn from and bring to Wishes, those lessons?
Well, I had a very good mentor. His name's Walter O'Brien, one of the smartest guys in the world. And he was actually, though, he's like the fourth highest IQ ever recorded, I think. And he tried to tell me a lot of things during our mentorship for 2 years, but I just couldn't listen to anything because my mind was so like, go, gotta go, gotta go. Like, but after all that stuff, I was like, man, Walter was right about so many things. He actually told me, he's the guy that told me, dude, you gotta like, you need to have all this code documented. I was just like, documented? What do you mean? Like, because he's like this engineering genius. Like he's part of that guy that made all these things happen. I think the biggest mistake that we did when we were hiring, first of all, you can't have a guy like me going, yep, yeah, he's hired, because I don't know anything about code. Like, so you actually have to have like some sort of test that these guys do to actually show that they actually know what they're doing. And that test has got to be put together by someone that's pretty brilliant or someone that actually really has their stuff down. And that's for each specific like job level. So DevOps, backend, front end, UI, like all of the specific jobs have different tests, not the same tests because they're all different jobs. People say, oh, I'm full stack engineer. Full stack engineer don't exist. Sorry. So like somebody says they could do back and front end. Typically, those guys can do one of those jobs very, very well. The other job, they can kind of get by, right? So full stack is just not really a thing. You need senior engineers at each level, right? Not half-ass at front end and then amazing at back end. The other thing is that we had the platform side, like the engineering department was completely siloed from the rest of the company, right? And so I think that was a huge issue because we really never knew what was truly happening. And again, Walter came in and he's like, dude, you need to understand engineering to the point where you're dangerous. You don't have to know how to code, but you need to know like enough that you can speak intelligently about this stuff. You can't just pretend that these guys are doing what you need to do. And I think that was really a hard lesson, but also one of the things that I learn now. I know I'm pretty dangerous. Like I can't develop myself, but I know all the things that I need to in order to run an effective company and be effective leader, and I think you can't do that without actually understanding enough. And I was kind of just like, well, I don't need to know that, right? It's like, no, you actually do, and that's one of the things that I would recommend to anyone that's running a tech company that's not a tech person is that you need to understand because people will just bullshit you and you'll get the wool over your eyes. Oh, okay, it's getting done. It's like, no, it's not. You need to be able to double check and actually understand and have some accountability. And if you don't understand anything, you can't make people accountable. And I think that's a huge lesson that I learned for sure.
So from the mistakes, maybe testing hires and making sure there's some knowledge there, and then siloing, which then you go to Wishes and you have Mitch and Alex heading up dev team, and you have a whole basically people heading this up and a whole team around it from the beginning.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, part of it is like, before we were like, oh, we have Slack. But Slack doesn't solve the problem. So we have our weekly team meetings. We go through what was done last week. We go through what the initiatives are this week, where the problems are, what we need to work on. But we're always in communication on Slack. But before we had Slack too, that's not the final answer, right? Slack is a communication channel. But if you have siloed departments, you really don't know what's going on. You're basically just saying, hey, why do we have a problem here? It's like, I don't know. Let me check. It's like, if that's the only way that you're communicating as a non-tech founder, or, I could say it like we had the front side of the office, like where customer success lives and, the executive team lives. And then you had this part of the business where we really didn't know what was going on, but we would ask questions when there was problems. That's not really communication. Like, you should be working through the issues together. You should be having weekly team meetings that review what was accomplished last week. What is going on this week and what the priorities are. And so if that's happening on a weekly basis, and then you have a communication channel where everyone's actively working together, not, hey, what the hell is the problem here? Why is this not working? Because typically a non-tech founder, we'll distance ourselves from the tech because we don't really understand it, right? And then we're just like, dude, what's up? Why is this work not working? But that's not the way to communicate. So I think an open line of communication, but ultimately an understanding and being able to spot check and make people accountable is what keeps it together.
What else did you learn from Profit Pay that you take into Wishes?
Well, I think there was just so many lessons. I think the biggest lesson that I learned probably is that when we built a pretty innovative model that allowed us that was centered around advertisers and e-commerce merchants, that allowed them to, because we found that most e-commerce merchants were the small mom and pop shop. But when I say small mom and pop shop, a lot of these guys are doing 50 to 100,000 to $200,000 a month. That's not necessarily small, right? But they were using their debit card to, pay for their marketing and advertising. They're not getting any cash back. There's lots of issues with that. You can only run one campaign. And so we solved the problem by issuing virtual cards so they can actually manage multiple ad accounts and earn 2% cash back on all the spend. So that was kind of the thing. But I think where so it scaled very fast, and we didn't have
How did you get
processes.
customers at that point?
Yeah, well, social media. So and then we were part of a lot of advertising groups. So we had just a ton of people coming to this, and I was speaking at events but advertising events specifically with like thousands of people and on stages. So I kind of weaved myself into the fabric of that advertising matrix, where like the AWS and not the AWS, but Affiliate Summit and like places like this where there was just thousands of people and I was talking on stages. So I became like an authority figure in the space. And, I weaved myself in there through the back door again, but then I became this authority in the space and I was talking on stages. And so that's how we were getting a lot of clients. But what I was going to say is we didn't really have processes in place, so we actually scaled very fast. I mean, I remember we threw $50,000 at a social media campaign, and it was on fire, right? And it's like, dude, we had no way to support all the opportunity that came in. And it sounds like a simple, like, well, duh, like, you have to have processes to do this. Well, I mean, we honestly, yeah, we just were like, hey, listen, we need to get money through the door. We need to get these people in the platform. And it seems knuckleheaded, but it's just one of those things that we didn't have processes in place for that type of scale. And so those were hard lessons that we had to learn. And I think you can't actually scale a company of any size and actually build a massive company without process. Process is literally everything. And if you have a product that you can get market share with, process is everything. It is everything.
I want to there's an episode I did with Adi Clevitt, and it's interesting. She's an actual business where she is done for you SOPs. So she goes into a company and she helps them document process. And it was a great episode because I geek out on that stuff. And also we just talked about our favorite productivity tools. So I encourage everyone to check out the one I did with Adi Clevitt, where that's literally all she does all day long for companies. So it's a very instructive episode. What about lessons from the acquisition?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to build something that somebody can just come in and take over, right? And I think that goes back to processes again, right? If you don't have duplicatable processes where Jeremy can come into my business if he has the money and he's like, listen, I don't need you, Chase. Maybe I want you on for a little bit because I like you or whatever, but you need to build a business that's self-sustainable, that doesn't require Jeremy to learn all the things of the business, because people want to buy a business, they don't want to learn the business and, be in the business necessarily. And I think it's a box, right? So you got to build a box that someone could just buy. I want this box, and I don't want to know nothing about nothing other than how does this box make money? And it's just duplicatable. And like, I can, that's really the biggest thing, that I learned is that, it's got to be easy. And somebody's going to be able to just step in there and take it over.
What about the acquisition process itself? Like, eventually someone's gonna probably offer to buy Wishes. And
Yeah.
what do you wish you knew when you sold Profit Pay?
Well, I think you need to start that once you start scaling, you need to start that process. Like there's a process that you can do to start feeding in, like with the potential buyers. And so one of my mentors with Wishes, this is one of the things that he does with big companies like Amazon and Facebook and stuff like this, is he'll start talking to the people internally. You can't just go to a Facebook later when you're ready, be like, yo, like we're here. It's like, that's a process, but if you start talking to them early and like, hey, listen, we're doing this thing, want to, just put it on your radar, like that type of stuff early when you start to be able to get some scale, then they start, and then but you continue to, poke them over time, every quarter or stuff like this. That actually, and then all of a sudden, like, boom, you're on the map. They're like, hey, listen, we need to look at this. You know what I mean? Because going to them at that time, like when you're already scaled, like it's a harder conversation. If they're already if you already have somebody like kind of looking at you and like, hey, listen, we just want to keep you abreast of what we're doing. Hey, this is what we're doing. Like, then you actually become an acquisition target, instead of actually trying to do it all at once. Saying, hey, like, look at me. It's like, no, like that's a process. You got to get into the right people. You got to have them start looking at you. And I think that is one of the things that's super important is, just start that process earlier than later. Once you start scaling the business, and when I say scale, once it start launching and you're doing some transactional revenue and everything works as expected and you're solving a big problem in the market, you can start having those conversations. Hey, we want to let you know about what we're doing. Hey, look at us, like type of thing. And then as you start really kind of scaling the business more, continue those conversations, and then you really become an actual real acquisition target quicker.
So back to Wishes for a second, Chase. So we talked about compliance. We talked about building the team. We talked about sponsorships. And we haven't even got to creating demand and wait list. So how do you set out to do that?
Yeah. So our marketplace brings together donors that really want to understand what their dollars are. This is the thirst in the market. Pretty much everyone's jaded. Everyone's gone to the grocery store and seen how they ask you for $1 on every single purchase, no matter what it is, but nobody understands where that money goes. And the reality is that the grocery store is taking a huge tax write-off for millions of dollars that consumers are putting in there, which, in itself is kind of like annoying. But I think that's a jaded marketplace. Donors want to understand. I've talked to thousands of donors and they all actually want to understand what goes to admin, what goes to impact. Why did nonprofits want to get on the platform? We help them raise money, and we're actually opening up them to thousands of new donors that they never would have had an opportunity to speak with before. So I think our marketplace allows donors to always understand, no matter where they're donating, right? So if all things being created equal, as a donor, if you're able to get rewards, tax deductibility, and instant transparency on any donation that you give, and it doesn't cost you anything, like, duh, why aren't you doing it, right? Because you can actually house all your tax receipts in one place, easily send it over to your CPA at the end of the year. It's downloadable, and you can donate to any charity that you want to at any time, any cause at any time, and always be at the safe place to understand that your money will never go to anything nefarious, right? Or something that's not real. We have validated every single nonprofit on the platform. So we're attached to candidates, so we can always understand that these nonprofits are real. But I think as a nonprofit, what is the real reason they come on? Is because we help them raise dollars, and we help them raise dollars by being transparent. Because if you're on the platform and you're being transparent about the way you're raising dollars and spending dollars, donors want to help you and support your cause. And if you're a new nonprofit and you've never raised money before and you're brand new to the market, guess what? It's a dog world out there. It's hard to raise dollars, so it's not easy. And if you have no experience and you have no credibility because you've never done it before, Wishes is a platform that helps you raise those dollars and puts you in delight that people understand that you're transparent and they'll give you a shot. So, and then we're also opening them up to thousands of donors that didn't know they existed, right? Because as a nonprofit, you have a small circle of world that you live in. You might have a hosted page and you have a payment form there, but how do you actually get seen by the public if you're a small nonprofit that doesn't have a budget to market? Well, we actually provide a marketplace full of donors that want to actually try to make an impact. So it is easier for them to raise dollars on a platform like ours. And so I think we kind of have a niche where we're helping the nonprofits, but also ensuring that the donors can always understand those dollars are going to the right place. And um, I think that's how we're really attacking the market,
Let
for
me
those types of ads.
just walk through a couple scenarios. So if you're listening to the audio, there's a video component. We're on Wishes.Inc here. Let's talk about the wisher scenario, the nonprofit scenario, and the donor scenario, and how it works on your platform. So how does it work with the
Yeah.
wisher?
Yeah, so a wisher and the nonprofit, they come in the same way. The only difference for a nonprofit is that we validate their nonprofit status with through Candid instantaneously before they can post a story and actually raise funds. So that they can't just raise money as a nonprofit and actually not be a real nonprofit, right? So that's number one. Wishers and nonprofits are really kind of the same category. But what they do is they create a story. They can put up a video. They can put up a picture. They can say what's going to admin, what's going to impact. For anything admin related, they can attach their bank account. Those dollars flow directly into the bank account. For anything mission related, that's product or services related, they get issued a virtual MasterCard for those. And then they can spend inside of the shopping portal, which is attached to pretty much every major category that they could potentially raise money for: health, pets, clothing, all the groceries, all the things that they want to do. And as a donor, when they come into the platform, what are the main things? They can donate to any charity that they want to. If there's not a charity inside of the platform that we're connected to currently, they can request the charity, so that way we can connect to them, and then they can create a story, and then they can start taking those dollars. But as a donor, you can earn cash back on every single purchase, or every single donation that you do. You can send prayers and messages to people or causes inside of the platform, which is not that's not a feature that anyone else has. You're able to also earn
Talk about
rewards.
the cash back and rewards for a second, because that's not typical.
Yeah. So, as a payments guy, what we did is we thought about like the Maui fire situation where somebody loses their house and you want to help them get a hotel room tonight or an airfare line ticket out of there because they have no place to stay, or groceries for their family because they have no food. You can actually donate to a category like that, and then they get issued a virtual MasterCard and they can spend inside of the grocery category or hotel category. But what does that mean for the donor? Well, typically most donors on their own credit card, if you buy an airline ticket or if you buy a hotel or if you buy groceries, you typically get cash back and rewarded for that. And your actual card issuer will see it as a hotel purchase, or they'll see it as a grocery purchase or a restaurant purchase or a rideshare purchase. You'll be able to earn cash back and rewards on your own credit card. And then as an ambassador in our platform, you earn an additional 1% on any donation you make. You can send those person messages. So we kind of built in the cash back and rewards for any donor because we wanted to just, hey, listen, all things being created equal, most donors don't do it for the cash back and rewards. But hey, if all things being created equal, if you can actually get rewards and cash back on a donation, why not? Right. So we built that feature in because why not? I feel like the only category, one of the main categories that people donate to charity. There is no category that gives you cash back on those purchases. But what if there was? And here, welcome to Wishes, So we actually do that because I thought that why not? And we can, because our nonprofit owns 11 LLCs, and those LLCs are all specifically categorized for the bonus categories on your credit card. So Wishes Hotel, Wishes Groceries, Wishes Restaurant, Wishes. So when you donate to a category specific cause or crisis or charity specific thing that's raising money for a food bank, whatever, you can actually help them directly with what they need and actually earn cashbacks on your own credit card directly. And it's pretty cool.
Chase, I want to be the first one to thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing your lessons, your journey. There's so much to dig in here, so little time, but I want to encourage people to check out Wishes.Inc. and to learn more and share and spread the word and the love. And Chase, thanks so much.
Hey, thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate it.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like 100 grand.